Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio. Ours is a place where dreams take flight, voices are heard, and stories are shared. This is where cultures meet, connections are formed, and ideas are transformed into action. This is your destination for authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations. We're where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover our world of education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our USA Global TV channel and download our USA Global TV app. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. With heartfelt thanks to our executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, music scored by Yifei Tang from Cloud Road Music, creative direction by Paul Garcia, and I'm Al Cini, and I'm very proud to be part of the USA Global TV and Radio family. So join us here at USA Global TV and Radio. Make us your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication, or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited. Thank you for being a part of our global community. Let's inspire together.
Howdy. Red Laughlin here. We're on The Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. When I'm not hosting a show, I do 3 shows every Thursday. This is the middle of the 3. And I research the human body at the cellular level, chemically speaking. I look for cause and effect relationships. Treat a cause, fix a problem. Treat symptoms, and you'll always be treating symptoms. I specialize in longevity and age-related diseases. That's my focus. That's what I love to write about, speak about. I also publish books for people. I just published one last week. Last month I published one for a guy in Dubai. So those are things that I also help people with. The focus that we have today is a return guest, literally just from a couple, 3, 4 weeks ago. It wasn't very long. Doug Smith. He wrote a book that's literally just been released, and it's on leadership, but from a different perspective. You know, we think about leaders coming from the corporate world and they did this, or maybe leaders in the military, possibly leaders in our academia or political world. But he's looking at leadership, that the lessons that he learned from prison. And I thought we had a really delightful conversation the last time he was here. So, Doug, please join us.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me on the show.
Welcome back. And we were just at the beginning and backstage, and a question came up. What is it like once you get sentenced? You're in the court, and they say, okay, you're going to be 5 years, 10 years, 50, whatever. All of a sudden now, stark reality is starting to set in. Now, you were sentenced to prison, and you ended up there 4 or 5 years, if I remember right. We'll talk about that in just a second. But the reality of what goes through your brain when all of a sudden now I'm going to be in prison for 10 years. How do you cope? How do you adjust, manipulate your brain to live that next 10 years?
That's a really good question. You know, it goes in stages. You know, when I got arrested, it was the end of a long battle with substance use disorder and mental illness that just spun tragically out of control. And so there's the back of the police car knowing that you're not going to get forgiven for this. You're not going to get probation for this. You're actually going to do some time. And so, you know, I had to feel the crush of incomprehensible realization that I wouldn't see my daughter, that, you know, that it was over. Got into county jail and just by the magic of the universe, found a meditation class. So that was an opportunity to sort of connect spiritually, learn to accept my situation, and start a path to recovery. And then, you know, by the time I got the plea deal, we had been through we'd seen the judge many times. And so there was a sense of relief there. And since I was in county jail for 4 months, I was already used to being incarcerated. So getting sent to prison, believe it or not, was kind of a relief because I was no longer in holding. I knew that I'd be getting regular meals and get to see a rec yard and things like that. And I had a 15-year sentence. With the chance of parole at about 2.5 years. So I had hope as well. So, just such a range of emotions, but it's a process.
Knowing what you know now, and a close friend of yours, a relative, how would you help them prepare for that kind of transition in their life?
Yeah, honestly, I would invite them to get into meditation. There's a reason where you're far more accepting of your situation. You can learn to breathe and just notice things. I would say be prepared to connect with anything that gives you hope. So even if it's a minor program, like sometimes they have chapel programs on Bible studies or substance use classes, things like that, then get connected with them really quickly, because it's good to find sources of hope right away, and just recognize you're not alone. Everyone's in there for a reason. And look for the winners. Look for the people who want this to be their last time in prison, and surround yourselves with them.
Okay. When you were in there, did you have any thought that you'd be doing what you're doing today?
No, I thought my career was completely smashed to pieces. I had no clue what I would be doing. Believe it or not, I had earned my social work degree and did some public policy work, and also worked at the Texas Capitol and taught as adjunct at UT. Excuse me, that's University of Texas at Austin. So my downward slide into prison happened after some professional achievement. So it was a bitter pill to swallow to think that I would never get to do that again. And so I thought, what type of trade could I get? Could I be an electrician? Could I be a welder? I wasn't sure, but I just knew that chapter was over. And I was, so when I did get back in, it became the greatest job that I've ever had in my entire life.
Okay. The aspect of you had an addiction issue.
Yes.
And we talked briefly backstage about mental health, but particularly mental health that goes unnoticed in adolescence. And
Yes.
And that's not something we think about very often. We think about mental health issues, but we never really equate that to somebody less than 18 years of age. What are you finding out about that nowadays?
Yeah. So what we know is that probably about 90% of the kids who go into the juvenile system have pretty significant trauma histories. A lot of them have mental illness. It tends to start or reveal itself in very early adolescence. And, fortunately today we have words for that people speak without stigma. It's not always true. In some communities, people dare not speak about mental illness. But for me, my symptoms emerged pretty early. I was 11 or 12, completely suicidal, crushed to the ground, fearful of my own shadow. A lot of that was probably trauma related and a sense of abandonment, but very clear mental health symptoms that did not go addressed. I didn't even know how to ask for help. And, my mom was a single mom. Everyone was under stress. It went unnoticed. And fortunately, I survived it, but it was probably one of the darkest periods of my life, probably second only to going to prison. And it goes unnoticed for kids. Even today, there are kids 13, 14 years old who are experiencing their first symptoms and not sure where they're coming from, and not sure, just shocked by these feelings of suicidality, not wanting to be there, feeling alienated, bullied, all of that. There are kids today that are experiencing them. I think one of the hopes of my book, in addition to really connecting with what leadership truly is that people might read that and read their own stories and feel some healing in that. And who knows, maybe there's a young person who gets a hold of it and finally understands and feels heard.
One of the things that I think every one of us, doesn't matter our age, our location, everybody goes through stress. And that stress, I talk about it a lot in programs books and things, and when I speak. And some people reach out and they grab a hold of that stress and they will not let go no matter what. It's just, it's theirs, and they are going to enjoy every minute of it. I'm being facetious, but and other people have the same stress, the same boss, the same whatever, and yet it just flows off of them. And those are the two extremes. You have, maybe they're bothered for a couple hours and it's gone. Or the other person who just won't let go. And then that becomes part of their psyche because there are other things they won't let go of either. And so when I start looking at, okay, got a mental health issue, what causes that? That's where I start going, why is this happening? Well, one aspect of our daily life, our lifestyle choices, is stress management. Again, we're not taught anything about it. As parents, we have no idea to pass that on to our kids. There's so much stuff out there, but again, you don't know it's there. We don't know what we don't know. So the stress if that becomes a vehicle, I mean, there's other things that's going to cause stress too, diet and other issues, but
Sure.
That is one that's there and it's present, but not everybody is affected the same way. Yep. And I'm sure you see the same thing. Leaders are all different. And some are very successful being hard-nosed, and others are very successful being the exact opposite. So, but if I look at stress, how much do you think that really your inability to manage stress, did that exacerbate everything to that suicidal thoughts?
Absolutely. I think, there are different words for stress depending on what someone is experiencing. So, trauma, unresolved trauma, where people aren't seen, they go through harrowing experiences that are beyond their ability to cope, and they weren't met and given the help to process and complete that trauma, then it will remain with them. And so the thing that is stressful brings up those feelings from the past, and they start feeling the past as though it is present. And that's the nature of trauma. We overuse the term, but so I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. And naturally, if someone has unresolved trauma and they bring that into the workplace, then certain triggers like directness from a boss or negative feedback or the overwhelm of a project, it's going to feel much, much bigger than someone who may not have the same trauma history. It's the same project, they're just experiencing them differently. But everyone feels stressed. And even if you have a trauma history, we can handle so much more than we think. And stress in and of itself isn't a bad thing, right? It's what you feel when you're a high achiever. There's not one person I know who does really great things in their lives who doesn't grapple with stress in one way, shape, or a form, no matter how confident and experienced they are. I tell my daughter, who feels overwhelmed, and I just say to her, it never goes away. It never goes away. What you become is stress tolerant, and you recognize that the stress is actually propelling your success.
We're coming up on a commercial break in about 5 minutes. So I want to cover a little bit about your book beforehand, and then I want to go into some leadership aspects right after the break. You have your book with you, is that right?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
The Path of Rocks and Thorns. Rocks and Thorns. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it's part of the parable, the rocks and the thorns, that the seeds of connection with spirit, with God, or whatever you want to call it, is available to everyone. It's just raining down upon us, and sometimes there are things inside of us that block it. Right? It could be addiction, trauma, it could be self-sabotage, the way you think about yourself, shame. All of those things just block those seeds, block the access to who you truly are, and keep you from growing. And so that's the parable. It is the rocks that crush you, it's the thorns that prevent growth. And so that is the parable. And for me, the path of rocks and thorns really meant for me that I was going to have to go through something unimaginable in order to get to the other side. And from there, I'd be able to climb again. But who I was is not someone born to be in prison. Who I was is what's underneath the rocks and thorns. And so on the other end of that, you get to find out who that is.
Okay, so your experience in prison allowed you to have a deeper understanding of your religious, spiritual world.
Yes.
That now all of a sudden you had something you could lock into, you're anchored into, of which now became I'm sure that when you were in classes there and in prison, you weren't thinking, I'm going to write a book on this. That wasn't anywhere near. But as you start getting more involved in understanding who you really are and how your story is different than other stories, and how you can pull stuff out of your story that's of value to others.
Yes.
Is that when you first started saying, maybe I need to write a book?
Yes. So I got into back into public policy and advocacy after I was in prison. So, it took me a little while to get back into it, but I worked in criminal justice reform for about 4 legislative sessions in Texas. We lowered the incarceration rate. We dropped the prison population by about 20,000, lowered recidivism, and created opportunity for people post-release. But one of the most important things we did was we created, we help to reduce stigma and empower people who have experienced incarceration, mental illness, substance use, by putting them into the lead in many of these campaigns. And part of what we teach is storytelling. We help people to recognize that, yes, you have been through incredibly dark, harrowing, sometimes shameful experiences, but you also made really important decisions. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here working with me and testifying at the Capitol. So you made really important decisions. And the outcome of that is that you are empowered, you feel more healed, you feel more yourself. And so I realized that, that's the hero's story arc, and it is so healing, very healing. And so after years of doing that, I realized that it was time to write my own story. And if I use that story arc, which I do in every single chapter, that people are going to see themselves in that story. So a really good story, you're telling that story for the other person, not for yourself.
Storytelling. That's an
Yes.
art form in and of itself to keep people interested. Have you always been a natural storyteller, or is that something you've had to learn to develop a bit better?
Well, as a leadership trainer and coach, story is critically important. We use stories to communicate effectively. It's a great supervisory tool. It's a great way to do advocacy. It's just a really effective way to connect with people, and it gets people into action. So, I knew that, and therefore I had to hone the skill of storytelling. And fortunately, I was around a lot of good storytellers, so we would actually drill each other. So give me 3 minutes to do testimony on this bill in the form of a story. Pick some challenge from your past that relates. What's the decision you made and what's the outcome of that decision? So we would drill it. Anyone can do that.
Okay, we're coming up on a commercial break here in just literally a few seconds. When we get done with the commercial break, I'd like to talk about leadership, definitions, other things there, but let's get into the leadership realm for a little bit, okay?
Absolutely.
USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents Tracy Cram Perkins, a dementia caregiving survivor teaching how to balance care with peace of mind. #1 resource for dementia caregivers. It's the book Dementia Home Care: How to Prepare Before, During, and After. Over 17,000 copies sold of this must-have guide. And now a testimonial from Tracy Smith.
If I was to describe this book to someone who is going through a similar situation, I would underscore how important it is to have some sort of a tool or a guidebook to help you through certain stages. And there's so many, it's such an unknown topic to the average person. And to have this as a reference is essential. It's going to help you get through it personally, as well as help your loved one manage.
To learn more, go to TracyCramPerkins.com. Tracy Cram Perkins is an award-winning author. She's also the host of Dementia Home Care television show. Watch it here on USA Global TV and Radio.
Howdy, Red O'Loughlin here. We're on the Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. My guest today is Doug Smith. Doug's been with us before on the Corner Bookstore, and today we're talking about his ability, resilience, reform, leadership. How do you make how can you improve those aspects of your life? So please join me back up here on stage, Doug.
Hello again.
Okay, so we talked about leadership off and on in the beginning, but how do you define, in the military, one of the questions that I think first couple, 3 weeks, when I was actually got commissioned and we're out interviewing college students trying to get to recruiting, one of the standard questions that a lot of the recruiters use was, define a leader. And I thought I got so many different answers for that. So I'm going to say, Doug, tell me, define a leader.
Well, I mean, first to recognize that everyone is always having impact on everyone. So everyone is really born a leader. Everyone always has impact. So whether you walk into a room and how you walk into a room, your efforts to move things forward, to galvanize, to persuade, all of those things are leadership. And you could see it. You see it in a 2-year-old. And so we're sort of naturally leaders. So when you do leadership development, what you're doing is really helping people to connect with that. And you do it by helping people to see that the results that they are producing in their lives, right? You to look very clearly at, how's your team doing? How are people responding to you? Are you alienating people? Are you moving projects forwards? Are people meeting their expectations? Things like that. And so in leadership development, you learn to look at it as a mirror. Like all of these outcomes, this world that you're creating, you see the job of a leader is to see themselves in that. What did I do to create this? And whether it was what I intended or not. And from there, now you've got something, and now you have a pathway to becoming even more effective. So it's just a recognition that you're doing things all of the time that impact other people, and that is what makes you a leader.
Okay, so your company, your family, your group that you're in, and these can be applied all over. You have the tactical end of things. Those are the things that have to get done today. These are measurables. But then we also have the strategic thinking. Where do I want to be in 5 years, and how do I get there? Those are totally different mindsets. Do you, in your particular company, do you teach the strategic as well as the tactical, or how do you handle both ends of the spectrum?
That's funny that you should ask, because I work. My preferred client is one where we do it cohort style, so with a certain group that goes through a certain number of sessions. So I'm always happy to do a session, maybe a little bit of coaching on top of that, and people get some value out of it. But a a longer term program where you get a few classes is more impactful. And the reason is this: you start internally doing exactly what I've described. You look at, okay, I'm creating impact in the world. It's really important for me to shine some sunlight on that, to see how I'm producing, what's happening inside of me that's producing this. Where am I resistant? Where am I holding back? So it starts internally. What happens after that is that it starts manifesting externally. And at the tail end of that, that's where we get into really the nuts and bolts. So what is your vision? Let's get clear about that. Let's start bringing that into a strategy conversation. What are our objectives, our benchmarks? How are we going to go about it? So, but it happens at the tail end. So when people are really connected with their sense of themselves as leader, that starts to build confidence. They start to get into non-judgment. Now they can plan really effectively. And so they're trained now. Okay, so I'm looking at benchmarks now, and I'm not resisting the feedback those benchmarks are telling me what's effective, not whether it's working or not working. It's just data for me, and I'm going to adjust my actions to keep getting more effective results. But yes, we do that, and it always starts with a vision, and we move all the way down to the actual tasks. We bring your 5-year down to what's happening this month.
Okay, I understand that. Now, I have my company. I have a mission. I have customers. But how do I hire the right people, and how do I get them trained?
That's a really good question. So I'm not sure how to speak to training because I don't know exactly your industry.
Just in general, it doesn't matter what.
Absolutely. So in public policy, I have two people that I'm looking for. Obviously, I want people. When I was a supervisor of a policy shop, I wanted people who could write effectively, who could analyze really quickly, who could feel some level of comfort or at least willingness at a microphone or in front of the press. So I was looking for that. There's another, but I also wanted to hire people who have also been inside of prison, who have experienced mental illness and things of that nature. So they might not have that level of experience that someone more trained does have. So what I'm looking for there is pure coachability. So I want someone who's enthusiastic about that work, willing to learn, but entirely willing to be coached, to get feedback, to recognize where they need to grow. That is what I'm looking for. And that is the quality that's probably more important. I've actually hired people with lived experience who have almost no writing skills, but they were so utterly coachable that I knew I'd be more successful with them than someone who feels like they can do fine on their own.
We talked earlier about recognizing mental illness in adolescents, but sometimes when you're in a boss and you have 4, 5, 6 people working for you, and excellent, and then all of a sudden something starts to change, and they're late to work, their attitude sucks, whatever it may happen to be, something's going on. You're dying for feedback, but you can't just go ask them. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. It sort of depends. Some people will actually provide that to you. If what's going on, they'll tell you. So there's a lot of stuff there in understanding that human psyche of the person, what changed, and whether it's divorce, that seems to be a major one. That's a big trauma. I had a phone call one day. A guy worked for me. He was going to be out 3 days because he had DUI and he was in jail. And so I didn't mention anything to anybody else. He just had asked for a couple extra days of vacation as far as anybody else was concerned in the group. That's all it was. But you see a lot of these things going on. And as a leader, you have to be flexible enough. Okay, who's going to take over that responsibility for that 3 days or 3 weeks that somebody isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're coachable, as you say, how do you know somebody's coachable? Just because they can do something doesn't mean they will do something.
Oh, I know someone is coachable because I'll actually give them scenarios. I'll ask them moments that they failed or received feedback. I'll ask them, okay, so what did you learn from it? When you heard the feedback, what did you do with it? So I really want to know, right? What did you, were you willing to sit with that, even if it was painful to hear? And so that is what I'm looking for. And you can hear pretty quickly when someone says, well, that boss was this and that, so I felt like I needed to leave. Maybe they did need to leave, but you're not telling me that you're capable of getting feedback right now. And that just doesn't work for me. If I can't coach you, I can't train you, and I can't help you grow, and therefore I'm not going to invest in you. So, that's really important. But you brought up another subject. I hope you don't mind me just sort of kicking over to that other track. And you're talking about how stress or mental illness shows up in the workplace and impacts your role, and how do managers or leaders deal with that. And so I write about this in the book. People with mental illness they have a significantly higher unemployment rate. And when they are employed, they tend to be underemployed, far below their skill level. And so I also describe going to work when I was deep into depression, or when I was in a bipolar episode. I described that, and what you have to go through every single day in order to get through all of your projects and stay on track and not get fired, and yet feel like you want to die. And describe that. And I hope that people hear that and understand it is really important for you to say something. Mental illness is a medical problem. If you were having renal failure, you would tell your boss that you were having some kidney problems and that you need the time off. And we have so much stigma about mental illness, but it is a medical diagnosis, and you need sick time. You need to connect with your resources. And instead, people with mental illness just hide it. And, I can tell you that the one job where I had to walk through it with mental illness, I was ultimately let go from that job. They didn't fire me, they gave me severance, but it was humiliating. And so it's really important. I think I'd love to get that message out there, is if you're having mental illness, then you really do need to talk to someone. Take advantage of your resources, your time off, and insurance if you have it.
Well, Doug, that same issue with the mental illness could also be adapted to people who are alcoholic.
Yes.
Because it's a substance abuse. It has a stigma associated with it. It wasn't until just literally a couple, 3 decades ago that they started recognizing it as an illness, as opposed to a cultural aspect or some other way it was classified. And so people tend to hide it, but then the symptoms are, well, they're late to work, or they don't meet the project time constraints, lots of things. So mental illness, the symptoms could mask other things too.
Yes.
And you don't
absolutely.
And you don't always have just one thing. It's usually a myriad of things that are in there. Because if you're having some mental illness because of some traumas, and you're taking pills, or you're taking alcohol, or you're taking some other overdoing prescription drugs, or what. I mean, they kind of just start falling all over each other. Now you're really into a problem.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. And I also talk about that in my book. The mental illness becomes really confusing when there are elements of trauma being triggered. I had panic attacks, but I also had depression. Sometimes I'd have bipolar episodes, but I was also using prescription drugs and drinking really heavily. And it was just confounding to me. And every time I'd go to, when I went to rehab, I'd get out and still be as desperate as I was when I went in. It just felt like I wasn't addressing all of the issues. So, but to that point, if you do have substance use disorder, you really don't, your choice is either to let it destroy your career and then ultimately your life, because you're not going to function long term in that job and expect to grow or get pay raises or anything like that. So you really do have to say something, and that's going to put feet to your fire, because now you've got to do something about it. You're going to have to go to intensive outpatient, get a counselor, sometimes going to inpatient. So, but you do have to say something, because if you don't, your career is going to, the substance use is going to destroy your career anyway. So, I just encourage people, just say it out loud. You really have more to lose if you don't say it. Take advantage of your resources. And if you say it and your company fires you anyway, then, go get yourself a good attorney.
Who is a good ideal client for you, and who is not?
That's wonderful. I work with a lot of clients. It's interesting. I work really well with people with lived experience of mental illness, substance use disorder, past trauma. I work extraordinarily well, and I'm fortunate to get to work in multiple states, particularly with people who've used that life experience in their work. So I've probably one of the best employees you could ever imagine is someone who's in substance use or mental health recovery, right? Their gratitude for the job, their willingness to look deeply at themselves. So I do really well. But if you can take that up to a larger level, I work with people who feel stuck, who are swimming in shame, who feel paralyzed, overwhelmed. I work really well with that. I'm a trauma-informed coach as well as a solution-focused coach, and I also have a master's in social work. So I just work really well because I believe that the people have the answers. Everything is sort of internal, and so all I'm doing is helping them sort of clear away the things that are getting in the way, shine a spotlight on their own resources, and then they just go do amazing things.
How do people get in touch with you?
So you can do it in one of two ways. You can go to my website. It's www.d-degree.com. Or you can go to my LinkedIn page. It's up on the screen. But if you want to just reach out to me directly, you can just email me. It's doug@d-degree.com.
For our audio audience, D as in dog, dash hyphen degree, DEGREE.com, and Doug Smith, DOUG hyphen or dash Smith hyphen or dash MSSW for his LinkedIn account. Doug, I enjoyed our conversation. Again, I really and truly did. You provide a lot of good information. I can easily see why that you could be a super keynote speaker, which is one of those things that you do. So yes. I look forward to our next conversation. I'm sure it will occur in the not too distant future. So take care, enjoy, and I will look. I guess, as I said, I'll look forward to our next conversation.
As do I. Thanks, Red. I appreciate this.
Take care. This is Red O'Loughlin. We're on the Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. Our guest today was Doug Smith. Doug has a book out on leadership lessons from a prison cell is the subtitle, and the name of the book is The Path of Rocks and Thorns. And I have a show coming up literally in about 18 minutes on Talking Heads. I'll be talking about how you can publish your book in about 7 days. That's a follow-up from last week's talk on how to write your book in 7 days. So please join me on Talking Heads here shortly. If not, go to the USA Global TV and Radio Network on YouTube and find us in the archives. Take care of you all. Bye.
In a world that moves fast, there's strength in the woman who moves with grace. Introducing Bay London, where confidence meets craftsmanship. Each piece is intentionally designed for the woman who knows her worth, crafted from luxurious Italian eco-fabrics that feel as good as they look. With elegant coverage, effortless support, and timeless style, our swimwear celebrates both your body and your essence. Founded by fashion expert Carrie Sykes, Bay London is made for women who want to feel sexy, stylish, and seen. From poolside to beachside, sunrise to sunset, Bay London outfits you for every moment that matters. Because beauty isn't about age, it's how you wear your confidence. Bay London, confidence, elegance, effortless luxury. Visit baylondon.com. Act now for your exclusive friends and family discount of $35. Scan the QR code. Bay London, where confidence meets craftsmanship. Proud sponsor of USA Global TV and Radio.
USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents Steve Klein Art at steveklein.art.
My name is Steve Klein, born Manchester, England, 1953. My quest in my lifetime is to create artwork from my soul and the deepness within my wildest dreams and fantasies. In 2012, my heart stopped when I was given too much anesthetic for a minor knee operation, and this near-death experience took me to another multi-dimensional world, an out-of-body experience, and I was given the gift of being blessed by an overwhelming, burning passion to become, for the very first time in my life, an artist with an eternal, passionate desire to bring my art, which I've named multi-dimensional, subliminal, freeform art, to the world, as only 3% recover from what I experienced, and now in my golden years want to release my cosmic, vital energy through my art to allow people to be a part of my cosmic dance.
To learn more, email roccogoodwine@gmail.com. For VIP pricing, mention USA Global TV and Radio.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dies. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.